We'll stay on for an interview with Eli Steele. Eli Steele is the writer, editor, director, and producer of the documentary, get this, How Jack Became Black. It's about trying to enroll his multiracial son in LA's public schools and learning the boy would be denied entrance for refusing to state his primary race. He had to choose which race he was, mom's or dad's, and moms and dads are both mixed up too. The film attempts to answer the question, why does race still matter so much in America? Mr. Steele was born deaf, but thanks to a program designed to train deaf children in the auditory method, he learned how to hear and speak. His voice is a little distorted, as deaf people's voices sometimes are. For people watching, we have put subtitles on that. But if you are just listening, if you listen carefully, you get used to his voice and you'll be able to hear what he says. Here's Eli Steele, the writer, director, editor, and director of How Jack Became Black.
I am deaf. I am black. I am Jewish, white, Native American. So I am what? What about my kids, who are even more mixed than me? I get an email from my son at school. You need to pick a primary race.
White, Hispanic, Asian, African American, Black.
One needs to be chosen.
Primary and then a secondary.
Primary as in one side is more primary than the other.
I'm gonna call you and say which one you want to pick.
We have to put something.
You can deny my kid an education because I'm gonna pick a primary race.
I'm not one or the other. I'm this space in between.
Race is not an individual choice in America. It is a social choice.
Black, your skin color. It's about race. It's not about race.
They use the term multiracial or biracial to distance themselves from blackness.
But who says that I have to stay in that space?
There's so many kids who are being born of this next generation that are not a single race.
We're not able to say, oh, I'm mixed because you're forcing me to pick a race.
Very tempting to just say, let's just forget it. I'm a human being.
I think it's fear.
I don't think we as a nation are there yet.
They want to stay stuck into the norm of what we're used to.
What do we want? Justice!
Is race really the driving force in America?
Mr. Zimmerman was a white Hispanic.
You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
It's always gonna be that average white male, you know?
Privileges whiteness at the top of the scale.
They have mistaken white supremacy for personal excellence.
We've been trained to put someone in a category.
My race does not fit into a box.
Here we go.
So he would be African American?
Absolutely. Hispanic. Let's say white.
Eli, thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Your film is called How Jack Became Black, and it's basically about registering your son at school. But before we get to that, and the racial craziness involved, but before we get to that, talk a little bit about who you are, what your heritage is, and where you come from.
I was kind of born into a unique state in America. I was born in the 70s to a black father and a Jewish mother. And at that time, it was sort of something to celebrate. It was progress. It was the coming together of Americans across the color line. And but since then, as identity politics grown, my choice, I'm the first one ever, if you think about that, from slavery, segregation ever, to say, I am who I am. I am not going to be what the government tells me to be, which would be black. I am black and I am Jewish. That's just who I am. And that posed a huge problem for identity politics as I grew up.
You know, you're black and Jewish, so you have won the oppression sweepstakes here.
Yeah.
and you have a handicap.
My mother and my father argue about that all the time. Who's the most Christian mind?
That's great, good home arguments. And you have a handicap, so that's your really identity politics. You've got it sewn up. And now your wife, what's her heritage?
It's definitely my ex-wife, and she is the first generation born in America from Mexico.
Okay, so now you have, how many children did you have?
2, Jack and June.
Okay, so Jack has now Black, Jewish, Mexican heritage.
And it gets even more complicated. My ex-wife's stepfather is Mormon.
Okay.
So biologically, Jack and June, she's 100% Mexican and they're half, but they've got that whole influence. And I mean, there's so many different influences. Plus, America. I mean, they are the most all-American
They're
kids.
all-American, right. So now you take Jack, now you're taking him to register him in public school?
Yes.
Where is this?
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles,
the
okay.
The second biggest school district in America.
And what do they want from you?
They wanted me to check a primary race box.
A primary race box, okay.
Which I had never seen before, and that's the actual phrase, in CAP. And at that point, what do you do? I mean, I look in Jack, and Jack is, olive skin, and what do I put? I mean, what is he, and why only one? And then the second thing there was, decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to opt out. I'm not going to check anything. And they're like, no, you have to pick one, or he cannot come into school.
He cannot come into a public school.
He cannot begin his education unless we have that race information.
And so to pick a primary race is, first of all, it's picking between his parents.
Exactly.
Right? And so and it's also saying that his heritage, which is unique, doesn't exist. He has to have
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And what was interesting for me was these school officials, this is the front line. I mean, they are just, everyday people. They had no idea what they were doing or any idea why I had to check this box. So I went to 5 different schools, got 5 different answers. Mm-hmm. Jack went white to black and forth, and so I was kind of trying to prove the point that nobody really knows anything.
So did you eventually make a choice?
Yes.
So you made that's how Jack became black, because he had to get into an LA public school.
Exactly, and I kind of wanted to make the point though that make sort of almost kind of like rebellious system and say, okay, I want he should be black in the form, and then when Jack shows up, he could be lucky for a black kid, and it's just trying to show the whole absurdity of it. Then after I started making the film, that's just a starting point. I kind of opened up to the whole of identity politics in America. And after I kind of started making this film, I said, wait a minute, is identity politics really a racial order? Because they really organize it by race.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I just kind of started going deeper into the issue. And because I know with identity politics, we kind of focused on the Marxist aspect. But that kind of ignores that we live in America, and the white supremacy was actually the very first form of identity politics.
Right.
Because you had the black box, you had the white box. We just reinvented those boxes into 5 primary race boxes of identity politics. And so that's why somebody under white supremacy, my father, my grandfather would be black and inferior. And that's why we add value to that. And that's why today, just the whole group of people, like for example, Harvard, with the whole affirmative action scandal, they're marking an entire race of people as not having a personality, to devalue them, and this is done in the name of racial justice.
Yep.
And that's what racial orders do, they just organize this by race.
There are even universities now with dorms for black students, which to me is so appalling. I mean, being from the old school where we're trying to get rid of that stuff.
Exactly.
It's appalling. So now you make this, there are people in this film who essentially, left-wingers, who essentially accuse you of turning your back on the issue of race. What's the logic of that?
They are holding on to the one drop of black blood rule, and they are also defined by black policy. And, I may agree with some of what they say in terms of politics, but why do I have to subscribe to that entire framework of that group thing? That's not the promise of being American. If we have the freedom to be able to make choices for ourselves, to look at everything. But why do I have to give up my individuality to be part of that group?
Yeah.
Because,
why do you think? Why is it so important to them that you make a choice, not just for your son, but essentially for you. Why do you think they want that?
Because they believe, they have the belief that will lead to racial justice, that they need the numbers, that they need the elision to whoever society, what the black politics is going to be. They need people to pledge allegiance to that. And when somebody like me, they know I kind of want to, it's not my rejecting what you're saying, but I want to look at the big picture. It's a threat.
Yeah.
Because it means I'm not going to be 100% your kind of black. And for me, that's what we always talk about, what is black? And for me, black really for me is the stories that come from the responsibility that I have to my heritage. Because I do really feel the responsibility to be the best person I can be, because my people suffer so much, and I wouldn't be here if they had found a way to make it possible. So I do feel, so it's not that I'm rejected, but it's sometimes when you look in race, when you make black politics your focus, sometimes you get locked into that box of race, and you see the humanity beyond it. And sometimes you get trapped in that power where you, like for example, you say 75% of black males in California students are now on the reading level, on the grade reading level. We say, oh, okay, that's black. They're black, that's why. We don't move beyond that problem, beyond that label, to the deeper problem. If I say 75% of the male students are not on the grade and reading level, the next step is, well, what's the problem? Who we need to fire? How do we change it? So a lot of people see black and they stop there. And so that's sort of what the trap is.
That is absolutely true. I think they're so afraid that people are going to put forward some kind of genetic explanation, that they're afraid to look at all the other explanations, like family dysfunction and all kind, including affirmative action. I think, it can be a dysfunction.
Absolutely, they argue that Black Lives Matter could be much more effective. If you want an organization, if you want to fix police brutality, you have to look at the bigger problem. It's not just black people. I mean, I know the whole history behind the blacks in policing. But we also have to be aware that we live in 2018.
Right.
And we have a white guy that was shot in Arizona after 4 minutes of contrary direction given to him. How can you ignore that just because he's white?
Yep.
And it kind of brings up a real early story that made me embrace all of who I was. He was a family friend. He was like at the Black Panthers in Oakland. He was riding on the freeway ramp with 3 other black guys. They see a motorcyclist collapse, crash on the ground. They stop. They walk over. They flip the visor. He's white. They flip it back on.
Wow.
They get back in the car and they drive around him onto the freeway. So that's always been like, okay, that's wrong. We're Americans. We have to look in the whole situation. Yeah.
So now you've put out this movie, How Jack Became Black. What kind of reactions are you getting from the right and the left?
It's very surprising. I'm getting a really positive reaction from both, from I would say, what I call the Bernie Sanders left and the Trump right.
So the far left and the Trump right, the socialist left, likes this movie.
Yes, because they know the identity politics gets in their way. They know that when you put people in race boxes, you can't go any further. There's nothing. It's a box. That's why it's not a pathway to.
I have to admit, I'm startled to hear you say this. When you say that people on the Bernie Sanders left, do you mean the politicians or do you just mean the ordinary people?
I would say the people.
Okay.
Because, for example, when I went to a recent film festival in Washington, D.C., and it was a very progressive film festival, and so I was kind of worried what the reaction would be, but the reaction from the audience was very, very positive. There was 2 ladies next to me who would probably have more of a stake in identity politics. So we would have a disagreement with them. So I would say that if you have some sort of investment in identity politics or derive some sort of power from it, you're not going to like this movie.
Right. So the ordinary people know that identity politics doesn't actually serve them because it puts them in the box, but the people want them in the box because that's where they get their power from. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I had young children, 17, Klavan from poor neighborhood, coming up to me after the film, and they wearing social justice warrior T-shirt, and they were just fascinated. They just wanted to know more. Like one girl, I told one girl, I said, well, we have 5 race boxes, but we have 180 people from 180 nations represented in America. How can you fit all of that into 5 race boxes?
Right.
And she was just like, wanted off to go tell a friend. So that's how you make little changes like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And why should you do it? You know, let alone how do you do it? Why should you do it? How Jack Became Black. Where can people see this?
Fortunately, almost everywhere. iTunes, Amazon Prime, and nearly every cable network on demand.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So you either be on the new releases or you just search for it.
Okay. Eli Steele, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.